Silence creates the biggest shock. Not anger, not revenge, not dramatic words. Silence. That is why so many people completely misunderstand empaths. They look at a kind person and assume kindness means weakness. They see patience and mistake it for dependence. They see forgiveness and believe it will never run out. For a long time, that assumption appears to be true. An empath keeps listening, keeps understanding, keeps giving chances that nobody else would give. They stay when others walk away. They support people through mistakes, excuses, broken promises, and emotional chaos. From the outside, it can seem as if their compassion has no limits. But beneath that calm surface, a very different story is unfolding. Every disappointment leaves a mark. Every betrayal adds weight. Every moment of being taken for granted slowly builds pressure that few people ever notice. The most fascinating part is that empaths rarely reach their breaking point suddenly. It happens quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. While everyone else assumes everything is fine, an internal shift is already taking place. And once that shift is complete, the outcome catches almost everyone by surprise. Many people expect an empath to fight for the relationship forever. They expect endless understanding, endless patience, endless emotional labor. What they fail to realize is that the person who has spent years understanding everyone else eventually begins to understand themselves. That is the moment everything changes. Not because the empath becomes cruel, not because they stop caring about people, but because they finally recognize the cost of giving too much to those who give very little in return. This creates one of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding empathy. Popular culture often portrays empaths as fragile individuals who are easily hurt and permanently damaged by difficult experiences. The reality is often far more complex. Research into emotional intelligence and human behavior suggests that highly empathetic people can develop remarkable resilience over time. The same sensitivity that allows them to understand others can also become a powerful source of wisdom. Pain teaches them lessons. Disappointment sharpens their awareness. Repeated emotional wounds force them to examine relationships more carefully than ever before. And once those lessons are learned, the empath that emerges is often very different from the one people thought they knew. What makes this transformation so powerful is that it usually arrives without warning. There is no grand announcement, no dramatic speech, no final argument that explains everything. One day, the person who always answered the phone stops calling. The person who always made excuses for bad behavior stops making excuses. The person who carried the emotional weight of everyone around them quietly sets that burden down. For those who depended on the empath's endless understanding, the realization often comes too late. They begin to notice an absence they once took for granted. They notice fewer conversations, less emotional support, less access to the kindness that always seemed available. Only then do they begin to understand the value of what they lost. This pattern appears so often that psychologists have long studied why people frequently underestimate those who consistently provide emotional support. Human beings tend to adapt quickly to positive treatment. What once felt special starts to feel normal. Appreciation fades. Expectations grow. The very qualities that made the empath extraordinary become invisible because people assume they will always be there. In today's video, we are going to uncover what really happens when an empath reaches their limit. We will explore why empathetic people are so often taken for granted, the hidden emotional burden they carry, the subtle warning signs that appear before they finally pull away, and the surprising transformation that follows. We will also examine why many people spend years regretting the way they treated an empath after that person is gone. Some of the insights in this video challenge popular beliefs and reveal aspects of empathy that rarely get discussed. The story is not simply about emotional pain. It is about personal growth, self-respect, boundaries, and the unexpected strength that can emerge from years of being misunderstood. Along the way, you may recognize behaviors, patterns, and experiences that exist in your own life or in the lives of people around you. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that the end of an empath's patience is not the end of their story. In many cases, it is the beginning of their most powerful chapter. Make sure you stay with us until the very end because the final lesson may completely change the way you view empathy, relationships, and emotional strength. The last part reveals why the people who hurt an empath are often left with a realization they never expected, and why that realization can stay with them for years. If you enjoy exploring the hidden side of human behavior, emotional intelligence, personal growth, and the deeper truths behind relationships, then you are in the right place. Welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe and join our growing community for more thought-provoking videos that uncover the psychology, patterns, and powerful lessons shaping our everyday lives. One of the biggest reasons empaths are taken for granted is surprisingly simple. They understand people too well. While most people react only to words and actions, empaths often pay attention to what exists underneath them. They notice pain behind anger. They notice fear behind arrogance. They notice insecurity behind criticism. Because of this, they rarely judge people as quickly as others do. When someone behaves badly, an empath often starts searching for the reason behind the behavior instead of focusing on the behavior itself. They think about the stress that person may be carrying. They think about childhood wounds, difficult experiences, personal struggles, and emotional burdens. This ability to see deeper layers of human behavior is one of their greatest strengths, but it can also become one of their greatest vulnerabilities. Many people benefit from this understanding without ever realizing how valuable it is. They make mistakes and receive patience. They break promises and receive another chance. They act selfishly and are met with understanding instead of rejection. Over time, a dangerous pattern begins to develop. The empath continues giving while others become comfortable receiving. What was once appreciated slowly becomes expected. What was once respected slowly becomes taken for granted. This happens because human beings naturally adapt to whatever is consistently available. When kindness appears every day, it no longer feels extraordinary. When support is always present, it no longer feels rare. People begin treating emotional support the same way they treat air. They only notice its value when it is gone. An empath may spend years listening to someone's problems, encouraging them during difficult moments, helping them recover from failures, and standing beside them when nobody else would. Yet because this support becomes part of everyday life, many people stop recognizing how much they depend on it. Instead of feeling grateful, they begin expecting it. Instead of appreciating the empath's patience, they start assuming it will always be there. This assumption creates the illusion that the empath can never leave. It creates the illusion that no matter what happens, no matter how many disappointments occur, no matter how many boundaries are crossed, the empath will continue staying exactly where they are. The problem becomes even bigger because empaths often dislike conflict. They would rather create harmony than arguments. They would rather understand than attack. They would rather repair a relationship than destroy it. This means many empaths tolerate situations longer than most people would. They give additional chances. They wait for improvement. They believe growth is possible. They believe people can change. In many cases, this belief comes from a genuine understanding of human nature. People do make mistakes. People do learn. People do grow. But there is a difference between supporting growth and endlessly tolerating harmful behavior. Unfortunately, that line often becomes blurred. The empath keeps hoping the next conversation will solve the problem. They keep believing the next apology will be sincere. They keep waiting for the promised change to finally arrive. While they wait, the people around them may start seeing this patience as permanent. They mistake compassion for weakness. They mistake understanding for unlimited tolerance. They mistake forgiveness for permission. Another reason empaths are often taken for granted is because they rarely advertise their sacrifices. Many people openly discuss everything they do for others. They want recognition. They want praise. They want people to know how much effort they are making. Empaths are often different. Much of what they give happens quietly. Nobody sees the emotional energy they invest in every conversation. Nobody sees how much thought they put into helping others. Nobody sees the mental exhaustion that comes from constantly absorbing emotional information from the people around them. Because these efforts remain invisible, they are frequently underestimated. The empath becomes the person everyone turns to during a crisis, but few people stop to ask how the empath is doing. Everyone shares their struggles, but very few ask about the struggles being carried by the person who is listening. This creates a strange imbalance. The empath knows almost everything about everyone else, while very few people know what is happening inside the empath. As time passes, the hidden cost begins to grow. Emotional exhaustion rarely arrives all at once. It develops slowly. It accumulates through countless small moments that seem insignificant on their own. One difficult conversation may not cause much damage. One disappointment may not create lasting pain. One act of selfishness may be easy to forgive. But when these experiences repeat over and over again, their impact starts to multiply. The empath becomes emotionally tired. They wake up carrying stress that does not even belong to them. They spend hours thinking about other people's problems. They worry about situations they cannot control. They absorb negativity from relationships, workplaces, friendships, and family dynamics. While everyone else moves forward, the empath often remains emotionally connected to the weight of what they have experienced. Repeated disappointment creates another hidden wound. Empaths tend to see potential in people. They focus on who someone could become rather than who they currently are. This hopeful perspective can be beautiful, but it also creates opportunities for heartbreak. Every time an empath believes someone will change and that change never comes, disappointment leaves another mark. Every time they trust promises that remain unfulfilled, disappointment grows deeper. Every time they invest emotional energy into a relationship that fails to become healthier, another layer of frustration develops. Yet many empaths continue giving because they genuinely want the best for others. They do not want to give up on people. They do not want to become cynical. They do not want to stop believing in growth. As a result, they often carry disappointment quietly while continuing to offer support. Feeling unappreciated can become one of the most painful parts of this experience. Appreciation is not about receiving constant praise. It is about feeling seen. It is about knowing that your effort matters. Many empaths reach a point where they realize they are giving far more than they receive. They notice they are always available when others need help, but those same people disappear when support is needed in return. They notice that their kindness is expected rather than valued. They notice that people remember their mistakes while ignoring their sacrifices. These realizations do not appear overnight. They emerge gradually through years of observation. The empath begins noticing patterns that were once hidden by hope. They begin noticing who only calls when they need something. They begin noticing who listens and who merely waits for their turn to speak. They begin noticing which relationships are built on genuine care and which relationships survive only because of the empath's constant effort. Perhaps the heaviest burden of all is carrying other people's emotional problems. Many empaths feel responsible for the emotional well-being of those around them. If someone is struggling, they want to help. If someone is hurting, they want to ease the pain. If someone is lost, they want to provide guidance. While this desire comes from compassion, it can become overwhelming when taken too far. The empath starts carrying responsibilities that were never theirs to carry. They become emotional caretakers. They become problem solvers. They become peacemakers. Slowly, their own needs move to the background. Their own exhaustion becomes less important than everyone else's comfort. Their own struggles become secondary to everyone else's crises. What makes this situation particularly difficult is that most empaths remain silent about what they are experiencing. Many people assume silence means everything is fine. In reality, silence often means the opposite. Empaths frequently keep their pain private because they do not want to burden others. They do not want attention. They do not want sympathy. They simply hope things will improve. They hope people will eventually notice. They hope relationships will become more balanced. They hope kindness will be returned. This hope keeps them going far longer than most people expect. It allows them to tolerate situations that others would leave behind much sooner. The outside world rarely sees this internal struggle. People see the smile, they see the patience, they see the calm behavior. What they do not see is the constant battle taking place beneath the surface. They do not see the mental exhaustion caused by years of emotional labor. They do not see the frustration created by repeated disappointment. They do not see the loneliness that can develop when everyone depends on you but very few truly understand you. Because these wounds remain hidden, many people continue believing the empath is perfectly fine. Then subtle changes begin appearing. They are rarely dramatic at first. In fact, they are often so small that most people overlook them completely. One of the earliest warning signs is reduced communication. The empath who once reached out regularly becomes quieter. Messages become shorter. Conversations become less frequent. The person who once checked on everyone suddenly seems less interested in maintaining constant contact. Many people assume this is temporary. They assume the empath is busy or distracted. What they fail to realize is that this change often reflects a deeper emotional shift. Another sign appears when the empath stops sharing personal feelings. For years, they may have been open, honest, and emotionally available. They may have shared their dreams, fears, concerns, and experiences. Then, little by little, that openness starts disappearing. Questions receive brief answers, personal details become limited, emotional vulnerability becomes rare. This is not because the empath suddenly loses the ability to connect. It is because they are protecting parts of themselves that have been neglected for too long. They begin realizing that not everyone deserves unlimited access to their inner world. Emotional distance follows soon after. This stage often confuses people because the empath may still appear polite and friendly. They may still respond to messages. They may still participate in conversations. On the surface, everything looks normal, but something important has changed. The emotional investment is no longer the same. The empath is physically present but emotionally withdrawing. They stop carrying responsibilities that never belonged to them. They stop trying to fix every problem. They stop feeling responsible for everyone's happiness. This distance is not created out of cruelty. It develops as a form of self-preservation. The most noticeable change is often found in their energy. People may not immediately identify what is different, but they sense it. The warmth that once filled every interaction becomes quieter. The enthusiasm becomes more reserved. The emotional intensity becomes lower. It feels as though a light that once illuminated every relationship has started dimming. Yet even at this stage, many people continue ignoring the warning signs. They assume the empath is tired. They assume it is just a temporary mood. They assume things will eventually return to normal. What they fail to understand is that these changes are rarely random. They are usually the result of months or years of accumulated experiences. Each ignored boundary, each disappointment, each moment of feeling unseen. Each instance of emotional exhaustion has quietly contributed to a transformation that is already underway, even if nobody around them fully recognizes it yet. There comes a moment in the life of many empaths that almost nobody sees coming. From the outside, it looks sudden, it looks unexpected, it looks like a dramatic change that appeared overnight. But the truth is very different. The breaking point of an empath is rarely created by one argument, one betrayal, or one disappointing event. It is built slowly through hundreds of experiences that pile up over time. Each ignored feeling adds a little weight. Each broken promise adds another layer. Each moment of being taken for granted leaves a mark. Most people only notice the final reaction because they never paid attention to everything that happened before it. They see the ending, but they miss the long story that created it. This is why the breaking point often feels confusing to those around the empath. They look at one specific situation and wonder why the empath suddenly changed. They wonder why the empath finally walked away. They wonder why the empath no longer seems willing to forgive. What they fail to understand is that the final event was rarely the real cause. It was simply the moment that exposed a truth that had been growing for years. The empath spends a long time trying to understand everyone. They understand excuses. They understand mistakes. They understand emotional struggles. They understand fear, insecurity, stress, and pain. They constantly search for reasons behind people's behavior. This ability allows them to remain patient longer than most people ever could. But eventually something important begins to happen. Understanding starts turning into clarity. The empath begins seeing patterns instead of isolated incidents. They stop viewing each disappointment as a separate event. Instead, they start connecting the pieces. They notice the same behaviors repeating again and again. They notice the same promises being broken. They notice the same lack of effort. They notice the same imbalance in the relationship. Suddenly, what once seemed like random mistakes starts looking like a pattern. That pattern becomes impossible to ignore. This shift is powerful because it changes how the empath views reality. For years, they may have focused on potential. They may have focused on what people could become. They may have focused on future possibilities and hoped things would improve. But clarity forces them to focus on what is actually happening. They stop evaluating people based on intentions and begin evaluating them based on actions. They stop listening only to words and start paying attention to behavior. They stop giving unlimited credit for promises and start looking for proof. This change does not make them colder, it makes them more aware. It allows them to see situations exactly as they are, rather than as they wish them to be. Many people expect empaths to continue tolerating the same treatment forever. They assume the empath's patience has no ending. They assume forgiveness will always be available. They assume understanding will continue no matter what happens. That assumption becomes one of the biggest mistakes people make. Every human being has limits. Every person reaches a point where self-respect becomes stronger than the desire to keep everyone happy. Empaths are no exception. In fact, when an empath finally reaches that point, the change can be even more dramatic because they have spent so long ignoring their own needs. One day, the empath wakes up and realizes they are tired. Not physically tired, emotionally tired. They are tired of carrying relationships alone. They are tired of explaining the same feelings repeatedly. They are tired of hoping for changes that never arrive. They are tired of sacrificing their peace to protect people who never protected theirs. This realization creates a turning point. It creates a moment where the empath finally asks a question they may have avoided for years. What happens if I choose myself for once? What happens if I stop chasing people who are comfortable watching me do all the work? What happens if I stop trying to earn the appreciation that should have been given freely? That question changes everything. What happens next often surprises everyone involved. The empath stops chasing. The person who always reached out first becomes quiet. The person who always repaired conflicts stops trying to fix every problem. The person who always made excuses for others stops creating explanations that protect bad behavior. This is often the first stage that shocks people. They have become so accustomed to the empath doing all the emotional work that they do not know how to respond when it suddenly stops. For the first time, responsibility is no longer being carried by one person. The empath also stops explaining. This change confuses many people because they are used to endless discussions. They are used to long conversations about feelings, misunderstandings, and solutions. They are used to the empath patiently communicating every concern. But eventually the empath realizes something important. If someone truly wanted to understand, they would have listened the first dozen times. They would have paid attention long ago. They would have noticed the pain before it reached this point. Repeating the same explanation over and over becomes exhausting. The empath starts recognizing that understanding cannot be forced. Some people only hear what they want to hear. Some people only change when consequences appear. This realization causes the empath to conserve their energy instead of wasting it. Another major shift occurs when the empath stops begging to be valued. This is one of the most important transformations of all. For years, they may have tried to prove their worth through loyalty, patience, kindness, sacrifice, and support. They may have believed that giving more would eventually create appreciation. They may have believed that enough effort would finally earn respect. But eventually, they discover a difficult truth. People who truly value you do not need to be convinced. They do not need endless reminders. They do not need constant demonstrations of your worth. Genuine appreciation exists naturally. Once the empath understands this, they stop fighting for recognition in places where recognition never existed. The most surprising part is that many empaths do not become angry during this phase. They become calm. Their decision is no longer driven by emotion alone. It is driven by clarity. They stop reacting impulsively. They stop arguing unnecessarily. They stop trying to win every misunderstanding. They simply begin redirecting their energy toward themselves. To outside observers, this calmness can feel unsettling. People often expect anger. They expect dramatic confrontations. They expect emotional explosions. Instead, they encounter quiet distance. And quiet distance is often far more powerful because it signals that the empath has already made peace with their decision. This is the moment when many people finally begin paying attention. Ironically, they notice the empath most after the empath stops trying to be noticed. They notice the absence of support. They notice the absence of encouragement. They notice the absence of understanding. The things they once viewed as ordinary suddenly become visible because they are no longer there. It is similar to losing something valuable that was always within reach. As long as it remained available, its importance was easy to overlook. Once it disappears, its value becomes impossible to ignore. Regret often begins during this stage. People start replaying past interactions in their minds. They remember moments when the empath offered support during difficult times. They remember acts of loyalty that were never properly appreciated. They remember conversations that helped them through personal struggles. They remember how consistently the empath showed up when others disappeared. Slowly, they begin realizing that what they lost was not easily replaceable. One reason this regret becomes so powerful is because genuine understanding is rare. Many people can listen. Fewer people truly understand. An empath often provides a level of emotional awareness that is difficult to find elsewhere. They pay attention to details. They remember important feelings. They notice emotional shifts that others miss. They make people feel heard. When that kind of understanding disappears, the difference becomes obvious. Conversations feel different. Relationships feel different. The emotional connection that once seemed effortless is suddenly gone. Loyalty is another quality that people frequently underestimate until it is lost. Empaths often remain supportive through difficult situations that would drive others away. They stay during failures. They stay during confusion. They stay during personal struggles. This loyalty creates a sense of security that many people take for granted. But once the empath decides to leave, that security disappears. The realization can be uncomfortable because it forces people to confront how much they relied on someone they failed to fully appreciate. Emotional support is equally difficult to replace. Many individuals discover that very few people are willing to provide consistent emotional care without expecting something in return. Empaths often offer support because they genuinely care. They listen because they want to help. They encourage because they want others to succeed. These actions may appear simple, but their impact is profound. When that support vanishes, people often recognize how much strength they drew from it. It is important to remember that empaths are not perfect. They make mistakes like everyone else. They can become overwhelmed. They can struggle with boundaries. They can tolerate unhealthy situations for too long. But their imperfections do not erase the value they bring to relationships. Their compassion, patience, and loyalty create experiences that are difficult to duplicate. This is why so many people only understand their importance after they are gone. While others are dealing with regret, the empath begins experiencing something very different. They begin healing. At first, this process can feel unfamiliar. For so long, their attention was focused outward. Their energy was invested in helping others. Their priorities revolved around other people's needs. Now they are learning how to invest that same care into themselves. This adjustment takes time. It requires practice. It requires patience. But gradually, a new version of the empath begins to emerge. One of the first changes involves boundaries. The empath starts learning that saying no is not selfish. Protecting their peace is not selfish. Limiting access to people who constantly drain their energy is not selfish. Healthy boundaries become a form of self-respect. They begin understanding that kindness does not require unlimited availability. Compassion does not require endless sacrifice. Love does not require self-destruction. As these boundaries grow stronger, self-respect grows with them. The empath becomes less dependent on external validation. They stop measuring their value through other people's approval. They stop defining their worth through how much they can give. Instead, they begin recognizing their value independently of what they provide to others. This shift creates a level of confidence that feels very different from the confidence they once knew. It is quieter, more stable, less dependent on outside opinions. Their relationships begin changing as well. Some relationships disappear because they were built on imbalance. Others become healthier because they are finally based on mutual respect. The empath becomes more selective about who receives their time, energy, and emotional investment. Instead of trying to save everyone, they focus on building connections with people who genuinely appreciate reciprocity. This creates stronger relationships and far less emotional exhaustion. Over time, emotional balance starts replacing emotional overload. The empath no longer feels responsible for every problem around them. They no longer absorb every emotional burden they encounter. They learn how to care without carrying. They learn how to support without sacrificing themselves. They learn how to remain compassionate without abandoning their own needs. Perhaps the most misunderstood part of this transformation is that the empath does not lose their kindness. The kindness remains, the compassion remains, the desire to help remains. What changes is access. Their energy is no longer available to everyone. Their patience is no longer unlimited. Their trust is no longer automatic. People must earn a place in their life rather than simply assuming it will always be there. The empath still possesses the same caring heart, but now it is protected by wisdom, experience, and a much deeper understanding of their own worth. As this transformation continues, the people around them begin noticing that the person they once knew is not disappearing at all. In many ways, that person is finally becoming stronger than ever before. In the end, breaking an empath is never really about making them suffer. The suffering often happens long before anyone notices it. It happens in the quiet moments when their kindness is overlooked, when their loyalty is taken for granted, and when their efforts are met with indifference. What many people fail to understand is that empaths do not leave because they suddenly stop caring. In fact, they often leave because they cared for too long. They gave chance after chance. They tried to understand what others refused to explain. They carried burdens that were never theirs to carry. They kept believing things could improve even when all evidence suggested otherwise. But every empath eventually reaches a moment of truth. A moment when they realize that protecting their peace is not selfish. A moment when they understand that their value does not depend on how much they sacrifice for others. A moment when they finally choose themselves. And when that moment arrives, the change is often permanent. Not because their heart becomes cold, but because their eyes finally open. They stop chasing people who never appreciated them. They stop fighting for places where they were never truly valued. They stop shrinking themselves to make others comfortable. The real surprise is not what happens to the empath afterward. The real surprise is what happens to the people who underestimated them. Many discover too late that genuine understanding is rare. Real loyalty is rare. Consistent emotional support is rare. They begin comparing every new relationship to the one they lost. They begin remembering the patience, the kindness, and the compassion they once treated as ordinary. And for some, that realization stays with them far longer than they ever expected. So if there is one lesson to take away from this video, it is this: never mistake kindness for weakness, and never assume that someone who cares deeply will stay forever. The people who bring the most light into our lives are often the ones we notice only after they are gone. If this video resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced this transformation yourself, or have you seen it happen to someone close to you? We would love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating content about human behavior, relationships, emotional intelligence, and personal growth. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next video, because the next insight might reveal something that changes the way you see yourself and the people around you forever. Until next time, take care of your energy, protect your peace, and remember that your kindness is valuable, but your self-worth is priceless.